This is my 2022 and 2023's Premier League predictions is on this video. This is one of the biggest videos on my channel, happens every once a year. Yes, it's the Premier League predictions that I am doing of the 2022 and 2023 season. I can really apologise if I haven't uploaded the predictions a bit earlier, because I want to know which signings of all the 20 teams are going to do before the season begins, of course, when Arsenal go to Crystal Palace on Friday. But I thought I'll do the predictions just now, just a day upload before the season begins, and we'll start from the bottom. I'm going to work our way up to the top and see who is going to finish in what position that I put them in for this new season coming up. In 20th place that I predicted for this new season coming up will be Bournemouth. I feel that Bournemouth will be going straight back down to the Championship after being promoted from last season from the Championship, as they came second that season. And also Scotty Parker's the manager of Bournemouth. He did that at Fulham actually, got them promoted and sent them back down. His track record as a manager is to bring teams from the Championship to the Premier League, but not be a sustainable Premier League team. And I don't really recognise Bournemouth anymore since when Eddie Howe left in 2020, because they had some very good players when in their first spell in the Premier League, when they had a team who were like mid-table during that 5-year spell. They were like bottom half team every single season since they got relegated in 2020, like 2 years ago now. But this team now has been absolutely transformed. Yeah, most of the players I probably don't even know who actually plays for Bournemouth compared to when they were in the first spell of the Premier League. They had made one signing that I familiar know is the West Ham player, defender Ryan Fredericks, and he signed for a free for Bournemouth. But I don't feel convincing they're going to stay up. They haven't brought many players in, or probably brought at least 1 or 2 players in the team, and they haven't invested much into the team. And I find it's quite easy, I think, that Bournemouth will finish bottom of the league. But I do see Dominic Solanke will have a good season for Bournemouth. I reckon he'll be the club's top goal scorer for Bournemouth this season. But I don't feel convinced that this team is strong enough to stay in the Premier League for another season, like they did in their first spell in the first 5 seasons in the Premier League. So I'll say bottom 20th Bournemouth. In 19th place in the Premier League, that will finish above Bournemouth and will be relegated to the Championship next season, is a team who always go up and down every single season. And I'm going to go for Fulham to finish 19th. Okay, in the Championship, they had some great goals from Aleksandar Mitrovic, scored 44 goals, the top goal scorer, and he was the league's record to score the most goals in the whole campaign. But I don't feel that Fulham will do a lot better in the Premier League. I don't think that's going to happen. I just think they're going to go up, down, a yo-yo club. I just don't see their team brought any signings in. They did got rid of one of their young players they sold to Liverpool. I think it was like Carvalheiro, whatever his name is, a young guy who scored quite a few goals in the Championship last season. He signed for Liverpool, and they are looking at buying a couple of players. I think they were looking at talks of buying Andres Pereira from Man United, and also buy Bert Leno from Arsenal that I know about. But in a way, I don't really feel convinced that this team will stay in the Premier League again. I think the 2 teams who came first and second last season, Bournemouth and Fulham, I reckon those 2 teams will be going down to the Championship once again. So 19th, relegated the next season, Fulham. In 18th place is one of the toughest decisions that I ever made. Who will be the last team that I predict will be relegated to the Championship with Fulham and Bournemouth? I reckon it's going to be at least a 4 shootout, meaning that there'll be 4 teams I reckon will be around that 18th position throughout the whole season. But I am going to go for Southampton to be relegated with Bournemouth and also Fulham. Okay, they've been in the Premier League for the last 10-12 seasons now. You know, they've got a very good team to stay in the Premier League for that longevity. I know they did it in their first spell. They were in the top flight for a quite period of time, they did. But I think the second spell, done the exact same thing from the first spell, but I think the clubs are getting so strong and so competitive, and I don't really see Southampton buy any players that I'm familiar to. Okay, they bought the Rangers striker who scored in the Europa League, He signed for Southampton, but they brought some young players he brought in from overseas, but I'd never heard of them before. And they brought in a Man City young youth player into Southampton, but I just don't feel convinced that this Southampton team will stay up. It was a tough one though, because I just felt that there was 4 teams around that I reckon would actually get relegated in 18th position, but I'm going for Southampton due to the fact that they haven't signed any familiar players or stronger players in the transfer market. Okay, James Ward-Prowse, he scores a lot of free kicks, and I think he will probably do the exact same this season as he is staying on for another season for Southampton, but I don't feel convincing that they're going to stay in the Premier League for next season. It's been since 2012 when they were promoted from the Championship to the Premier League, and they've been there ever since. Now it's been 10 years since they've been in the top flight. It's good to be in that league for that long period of time, but I think their time's up in the top flight, and I think Southampton will be relegated to the Championship next season. In 17th place in the Premier League that I'm predicting is Everton to finish 17th. Okay, let's talk about Everton, about why I put them in 17th position. Last season, they survived on the skin of their teeth. They had a couple good results under Frank Lampard. He came in January when Benitez was sacked. But this team's in turmoil, you see. You know, the club, have a go at the owners. They want him out the club, Missouri out the club, and the club's in a lot of debt and have a lot of problems, of course, off the field. But I don't think Everton are going to do and kick on after surviving from the Premier League from last season. I think they're going to really struggle, Everton, this season. But I think they'll survive though. Because I think Everton's squad is more better and more quality compared to Southampton's squad, in my opinion. So I just think that Everton will scrape survival once again for this other new season's campaign, and I think it'll be a very tough one. They haven't brought many players in the transfer market. Okay, they bought James Tarkowski from Burnley. They brought in Dwight McNeil from Burnley. 2 Burnley players they've signed who are relegated to the Championship. But I feel that this season coming up, I just think Everton are going to scrape it. But I reckon Everton will finish 17th in the Premier League. In 16th position in my Premier League predictions, I'm going to go for Brentford. Okay, I feel that Brentford had a very good, incredible season last season when they came 13th in the Premier League, and also signed Christian Eriksen in the second half of the season. Unfortunately, he hasn't signed for Brentford for this season as he's gone to Manchester United. But I feel that Brentford, of course, will probably have a second season syndrome. I don't think they'll probably get relegated though, because I just think they've got some great players they've got in their team who probably will stay in the Premier League for another season. I think they'll do like a Leeds, have a good season their first season, struggle, but I think they'll scrape it though. I just think that they do invest quite a lot of money in certain areas in their team, and they have brought some good players in. They brought in, obviously, Ben Mee. They signed from Burnley. They brought in a young, promising left-back, a Scottish left-back from Italian team that I really have high rates about him in the future. And I think that their team are trying to mould into a youth team. Obviously, Ivan Toney, will he score loads of goals like he did last season? We'll have to wait and see about that. But I just think Brentford will probably struggle, but I think they will survive on 16th position. And I'm going to go for them to finish 16th. So 16th, Brentford. In 15th place, I'm going to go for Leeds United to finish 15th in this 2022 and 2023 season. Leeds, of course, did survive on the skin of their teeth last season when they won in the last game of the season to secure Premier League safety under Jesse Marsch. He came in February when Marcelo Bielsa was sacked. He came in as manager, and he's actually stripped the whole of the Marcelo Bielsa's team, like obviously selling Calvin Phillips to Manchester City, selling Rafinha to Barcelona, the shirt I'm wearing right now, and he's moulded his own team that he had when he was at RB Leipzig and also RB Salzburg. He brought in Tyler Adams, a promising player in the future. He's brought in another player from RB Salzburg as well, and he's trying to mould the team that he had from his previous clubs into Leeds' football team. Do I feel they're going to probably struggle this season? I think they probably will in some areas. I think losing Rafinha was a big blow, and losing Calvin Phillips, he was injured last season, throughout the whole season last year, but that's a very big blow for Leeds as well, in my honest opinion. But at the same time, I think they are trying to make his own stamp in the Premier League. Jesse Marsch, of course. He brought in a player from Feyenoord as well. I can't pronounce his name though, but he's a winger. Could he be the Rafinha substitute, perhaps so, coming to Leeds? We have to wait and see about that. And signed Marc Roca from Bayern Munich, one of the most promising defensive midfielders in Bayern Munich's team from last season in the Bundesliga. And also signing him from Bayern Munich will be a big season hopefully for Leeds to maybe push on from this. And also, will Patrick Bamford be fit as well? Because last season he was injured throughout the most of last season. And if he's fit for this season, maybe Leeds could kick on and may finish 13th and 12th. I can see this team finishing top half of the table. The reason why I put them in 15th because I just feel that I'm not convinced enough in the defence, because they've still got Liam Cooper, making lots of errors from last season, and they like to concede loads of goals Leeds last season, and that's why they need to improve on their defence a lot better for this campaign if they got any chance on survival. They have obviously Luke Ayling's out injured, of course, until October, and there's a few issues at the defence. I think they've actually brought a couple adjustments in. It's not over yet, the transfer deadline day. That's over in the next month, but I do think Leeds will have to try and strengthen the team a little bit more, but they have spent quite a lot of money in this transfer window though. But I'm putting them in 15th position, Leeds United. In 14th place that I'm predicting in this Premier League season, I'm putting Crystal Palace in 14th position. Last season, Patrick Vieira has proved me wrong. I always thought at the start of last season they'd probably have a rough season and they probably would have got relegated last season. But this season, however, I think they'll finish 14th. I know they came 12th last season. Okay, they might have finished a little bit higher than my prediction that I predicted. But at the same time, Crystal Palace, of course, have got a very good team, a promising team in the future. I can see them pushing for a Europa League push. I can see them, but I just see there's 8 teams or 7 teams from 14th to 7th going to fight for the Europa Conference League position. But I am saying Crystal Palace will finish 14th though. The only reason I think they will finish 14th because I just feel that they might need to make more signings. Okay, they brought in Doucouré from France, and also they brought in the West Brom goalkeeper for a free, Sam Johnston. But at the same time, I think they need to try and invest more money to convince me that Palace can push on towards maybe top 10. So I'm saying Crystal Palace 14th. I think they had a good season last season. They'll do the exact same thing this season, but the Premier League is so competitive. And even from 14th up to 7th, I can see that area is going to be very, very tight, but I'm thinking it's going to be 14th Crystal Palace. In 13th position in the Premier League that I'm predicting is Brighton Hove Albion to finish 13th. Last season, they had a fantastic season, Brighton. I never expected Brighton to finish 9th last season. I put them in 16th last season, and then at the end of the season, they came 9th. But this season, however, I think they're going to finish 13th. They lost Bissouma to Spurs. They're going to lose Cucurella to go to Manchester City, one of the best left backs for Brighton last season, and he's going to go to Manchester City. And also, I feel that with Graham Potter stays at Brighton, I think they can finish in that area, that top half finish, and I can still see them also pushing for a top 7 position. But I just think with their team, with their expectations, I don't see it at a club like Brighton to try and qualify for the Europa League. I just don't see it happening. So I think 13th is a reasonable position to put them in. Okay, they've got some very good players in. Obviously, Trossard scored some great goals for Brighton last season. He scored against Arsenal and also against Spurs, and he's going to probably be a top player for this season, I reckon, for Brighton Hove Albion. But also as well with Mopé as well, they've got some okay players. They might have brought in overseas as well that I don't really know about and familiar about, but they could even kick on and still finish in 13th position, because I think Graham Potter would buy the reasonable and players for his new season, of course, after losing Bissouma, maybe losing Cucurella. At the moment he's still at Brighton, but he could be going to Manchester City as he handed the transfer request a couple of days ago. But at the same time, I feel that with Brighton Hove Albion this season, they're going to probably finish in that 13th position. So I'm going to go for Brighton 13th. In 12th position that I'm predicting for this new season, I'm going to go for West Ham United. I don't know why I put West Ham predicting 12th position. Last season I put them in 12th and they came 7th last season. And this season I put them in 12th again And will they do a lot better than 12th for this new season? The reason why I put them in 12th though, because they qualified for Europa League last year. I thought that would be a big distraction, but it wasn't, and they came 7th and they qualified for the Europa Conference League for this new season. But also now they're playing in the Europa Conference League and their squad's a very smaller squad. Okay, Declan Rice will be the captain for this new season after when Mark Noble has announced his retirement at West Ham United. But at the same time, I just think that they've still got a small squad of players. I just don't see them, you know, pushing on towards maybe 7th again or 8th again. I just feel there's more better teams than West Ham who probably will want to be in that top half finish. So I feel that with West Ham United, they brought in not many players also in this transfer window, not surprisingly so. They did brought a player from Rennes, they brought in a player from the Italian league. Not really familiar to them though, so I don't really know their names, but they brought in some couple signings, only 2, but at the same time they've still got a lot of work to do in terms of transfer window signings. Declan Rice, having him as the captain for West Ham is huge because, you know, I think he will lead the team. There was talk to him going to a bigger club, but he did say in an interview that he wanted to stay at West Ham for a couple of seasons, and that's probably good for West Ham fans to have and keep Declan Rice, one of the England's defensive holding midfielders in their team. But at the same time, I do not see them to kick on to 7th once again. I don't even see them finishing 8th or 9th. I could see it, but at the same time, I feel they're going to finish 12th again, like I predicted last season. So I think West Ham United 12th. In 11th position that I'm predicting in the Premier League, my prediction will be Wolves to finish 11th. Wolves have done okay in transfers, of course. You know, they brought in Hwang Hee-chan. He was on loan last season to Wolves, but they brought him in permanently this new season. And also, Adama Traoré returned back from his on loan from Barcelona, and he'd probably be a good player for Wolves this season with his pace, his stamina, and his strength with the ball, and him running with the ball and scoring a lot of goals for Wolves this season. And also they signed a Burnley defender, Nathan Collins, one of the promising defenders last season, but in the same way, to have him come to Wolves will probably be good as well in terms of defensively. You know, that will probably help them to probably push towards a Europa Conference League place for this new campaign for Wolves. But at the same time, Wolves, of course, are looking at buying more players, I think, during this month before the transfer window ends. I probably think they will do. And it was huge as well that João Moutinho and Ruben Neves and also Raul Jimenez will stay at Wolves for this new campaign, and they probably will make the team more strengthened, as we know that Wolves are now established quality Premier League team. And I think under Bruno Lage, I thought last season I put them in 14th, but they did quite well and finished 10th. But I do think they finished a little bit one place below 10th this new season. So I'm going to go for 11th place Wolves. In 10th place that I'm predicting in my predictions will be Aston Villa to finish 10th in the Premier League. Well, last season they had a bit of a managerial change during November, obviously when Dean Smith was sacked and Steven Gerrard is manager now at Aston Villa. But I do see some positives at Aston Villa going to Steven Gerrard's first full season in charge. I've heard some talk on social media that they've actually banned and they're going to put fines on players who turn up late to training, and there's a lot of strict methods that Steven Gerrard's put in place for Aston Villa for his first full season in charge for Aston Villa. But I feel this team will push on. Last year they came 14th, but this season I think they're going to really compete and go towards that European place. I can see them be the candidates for that position, and I just think that with their team, how they strengthened and the signings they signed as well, signing Diego Carlos from Sevilla, obviously now buying Philippe Coutinho for a permanent deal. Obviously he was on loan last season in January, but it was good that Villa of course have put that as a permanent signing. That's probably why I think they'll finish a lot higher in 10th position, because obviously with Coutinho, and they brought in quite a few good players in their team for this new campaign, and even having a centre back, Diego Carlos from Sevilla, will be also good for them at the back to try and not concede many goals. Obviously having Tyrone Mings and Diego Carlos playing at the same position together. I think they're going to be a more of a strength and defensive team as well at the back, and also attacking wise with Philippe Coutinho scoring the goals. And I still think he's still got it, and I still think they're going to probably will do a lot better from last season, and in Steven Gerrard's first full season in charge for Aston Villa. So I reckon Aston Villa will finish 10th this season. In 9th place that I predicted in this Premier League campaign is Nottingham Forest. Look, I thought I probably would have put Nottingham Forest a little bit lower than 9th, but the only reason I put them in 9th position because every time when a club gets promoted to the Premier League, a team probably who hasn't been in the league for quite some time, always kick on so well, and they always finish in 9th position. Leeds done it in their first season, came 9th. Sheffield United came 9th in their first season, coming back into the Premier League, and I think Notts Forest will do the same thing. I think it'll be a tough one though, but with the signings they've signed, of course, in the transfer market, they brought in Dean Henderson, but on loan from Manchester United. They brought in Jesse Lingard. There was talk of him going to West Ham, but he went to Notts Forest instead. And you know, they're a big club, of course, Notts Forest, and I'm so glad they're in the Premier League because, you know, they had Brian Clough, the guy who won 2 Champions Leagues in the 70s and that, and they had a lot of problems when they were in the Championship for the last, being in the lower league since the 23 years, not being in the Premier League and having a lot of issues in the lower divisions. But finally, last season, we all thought they probably would have got relegated to League One in the start of the season. They sacked Chris Hughton, Steve Cooper came in, he's turned them around from being bottom of the league into the playoffs, beat Huddersfield and got themselves promoted for the first time in 23 years. They brought in a striker from Union Berlin, they brought in Nico Williams from Liverpool. I think their signings were good. 10 signings have signed in this transfer market, and I do think they're going to finish 9th this season. So I think Notts Forest 9th. In 8th place in the Premier League that I'm predicting for this new season is Newcastle United. And this is the first full season with the Saudi Arabia who took over Newcastle when they took over last season in June, October time. But in the first full season with the Saudi Arabia takeover, I reckon they're going to really push on the league. I do not think they're going to finish in the Europa Conference League yet. I think it's a bit too premature for them to try and qualify for Europe and compete with the likes of, you know, Arsenal, you know, United, City, Liverpool and Chelsea. That'll probably take years for them to compete with them. But I think in the first full season for Newcastle, I think their main objective is to try and push into the top 8, in my opinion. I think they probably will do that. I don't think they'll finish 7th, but I think they'll finish 8th. And they have signed, at the moment they've signed the player from Lille, Seven Botman. They've signed him. They were talking about buying him in January, but he didn't come, but he came into the full season instead. And also they've obviously got permanently Matt Targett from Aston Villa. They brought him in as well. And also they brought in Nick Pope, a goalkeeper from Burnley, who was a good goalkeeper last season. Unfortunately went down to the Championship, and he's a very good additional goalkeeper for the team to try and hopefully compete with De Bruyne, the goalkeeper for Newcastle, this new campaign. And as well, they've got Maximan. If he kicks on, he stays fit throughout the whole season. If Callum Wilson stays fit throughout the whole season, and if the team stays strong and competitive, I reckon they'll may get into 7th position. But I think they'll try, but I think they might miss out, but finishing 8th. Newcastle United, I reckon you'll finish 8th this season. In 7th position to qualify for the Europa Conference League for this season will be Leicester City. Well, the reason why I put Leicester in 7th is because I just feel that, you know, without no European football for this season, they had a very poor year last year they had, but this season, without no European football in their distractions and whatnot, I reckon they'll probably will push on very, very high up in the league. The only disappointing thing that Leicester haven't even done yet this season is signings. They haven't even signed a player yet this season, and we are waiting to see if they're going to sign a player this season. But at the same time, they've still got some very good players. They've obviously James Maddison was talked to him to go to Newcastle, but it was rejected. That he rejected the move to go to Newcastle, wanted to stay at Leicester, and also talks that Yuri Tillemans could be leaving Leicester this season. Obviously, he was talked to go to Arsenal and talked to him to go to Manchester United for this new season. I think it's probably died out a little bit now with that talk with him going to Arsenal or Man United or leaving Leicester. And also, will Jamie Vardy score 20 goals like he's done throughout all the seasons when he's at Leicester? Because he is 35 now, he's getting on now. And there's talks of him. Will he score loads of goals for next season? He's still got the legs for it as well. And there's a couple, I think there's one or two transfers they're looking at talking about. I think there's one of them I don't really remember who they're trying to buy, because they could buy anybody. But also the Arsenal goalkeeper, they're trying to buy Bernd Leno to try and compete with Kasper Schmeichel. That'll be a huge one if that Bernd Leno does go to Leicester. But at the same time, I just think with Leicester City at the moment, with no European football on this season, and you know, with the players they've got, and they've kept Maddison in, Jamie Vardy, will he still carry on scoring goals for this season? I think he probably will do, and I reckon they'll finish 7th in the league in the qualifying for the Europa Conference League for next season. So I reckon 7th place, Leicester. In 6th place to qualify for the Europa League for next season, I'm going to go for Manchester United to stay 6th. Last season, they finished 6th under Ralf Rangnick. This season, under their new manager Erik ten Hag, I reckon nothing changes at Man United. I reckon they'll stay exact the same from last season. They're going to stay the exact the same position. Ronaldo looks like he could be leaving Man United. There was a big talks of him going to any other European clubs. Obviously going back to Sporting Lisbon could have happened. Maybe Bayern Munich wanted him. Atletico Madrid talked to him, or maybe go to Chelsea, perhaps so. But also, you know, I think of Erik ten Hag, of his first full season, I do not feel they're going to get top 4. I think Ten Hag's a good coach. I do think he's a good manager in the next, 2 seasons, I reckon. Not this season, but next season, I reckon he will kick on getting the top 4. You know, we'll give him time, you've got to give him. He's trying to rebuild Man United after a downfall season last year. There were talks of Man United trying to buy Frankie de Jong. There's him wants to stay at Barcelona, with him to stay at Barcelona. And then also as well, they've signed Christian Eriksen, they've signed Lisandro Martinez from Ajax that Ten Hag's familiar to as well, and also they've signed this Feyenoord left back as well. And will he play a good part for Man United in the years to go by? You know, we have to wait and see about that. But also the striking area is probably an issue that Ronaldo could be going, and that's probably why having Martial to rely on, I don't think that's going to happen. I know he had a very good pre-season at Man United, but I do not think to have Martial rely on, I don't think they're going to really compete for a top 4. If they can keep Ronaldo, then that's huge, because they could move up to 4th. But I don't see that happening. I can see them winning the Europa League, I can see it winning, but I do not see them getting in the top 4 this season. So I reckon it will be 6th place, Manchester United. In 5th place to qualify for the Europa League with Manchester United for this new season coming up will be Chelsea to finish 5th. Okay, Chelsea have brought in Raheem Sterling from Man City. They brought in Kalidou Koulibaly from Napoli. Obviously, having him to work with Thiago Silva, that'll be a good partnership at the back for next season if that does work out very, very well. But I just feel that Chelsea are going to miss out on top 4 for the first time in 4 seasons, because I just think that, you know, they lost the owner, Roman Abramovich. Obviously, he was sanctioned by the UK government as you know, the Ukraine and Russia issue over there. And since they got the American owner who took over for Chelsea, I do not think he has invested enough into the team. And I think with having Arsenal and Spurs have strengthened their squads, and having Chelsea, you know, having a bit of an issue. I think before the end of the season last year, they drew to Wolves. They didn't feel promising against Arsenal when they played at Stamford Bridge. They lost to Brentford 4-1. I just think with Thomas Tuchel, he's a good coach, but I just think that time is up for him, I think, for Chelsea. And I think he might be leaving, he could be at the end of next season, or he could be sacked during this season. But I just do not feel that Chelsea will get in the top 4 for the first time in 4 seasons. New owner, new era at Chelsea, new way, new methods, and I think that with having Spurs and Arsenal strengthen their squads and that, I just think that Chelsea are going to miss out in 5th place. So I reckon Chelsea will get Europa League in 5th. In the top 4, qualifying for Champions League for next season, I'm going to go for Arsenal to finish 4th. Last season, Arsenal had a very good season. Okay, they missed out on top 4 last season, but Mikel Arteta has brought in the players that he wanted in the transfer window. He signed players like Gabriel Jesus, a striker, obviously when Lacazette left and departed in the summer. He's a top striker who won the Premier League for Man City, and I reckon he's going to be one of the top goal scorers in the Premier League this season. I don't think he would be the top goal scorer, but I reckon he'll be like the top 3. But at the same time, he's going to score quite a few goals this season. And also buying another Man City player, left back Zinchenko from Man City, is very, very huge for them. And also buying Pablo Vieira from Porto. I think he could be very promising for Arsenal this season. And I think they're looking at buying, I think, a couple more players to try and strengthen their squads. But I feel that Arsenal this season will get top 4 for the first time in 5 years. I reckon it will happen. I reckon the rebuild is working out for Arsenal. They've turned around, they have, after that big downfall they had when they had Unai Emery and then Mikel Arteta's first or 2 seasons in charge as manager for Arsenal. And then this season, I didn't expect them to finish 5th, and they did finish 5th. And I think I can see them pushing more further. We've got a younger team. We've got obviously Aaron Ramsdale, goalkeeper, Saka, now Martin Odegaard, now the captain for Arsenal now as well for this season coming up as well. Smith Rowe will be very promising for Arsenal this season, and I think that for them, I reckon they're going to finish 4th this season. So Arsenal 4th, top 4. In 3rd place, that I'm predicting to finish 3rd and qualify for the Champions League, will be Tottenham Hotspur to finish 3rd. I know that why do I predict Spurs above us this season? It's because I just feel that they've signed more players. Antonio Conte is one of the best managers, I think, in Europe as well. You know, he'd done well at Chelsea. He won them the Premier League. He really, really got a lot out of Chelsea, and he got a lot out of a lot of teams he managed as well. And also being backed in the transfer market, you know, buying Richarlison from Everton. They brought in Bissouma from Brighton. They brought in Spence, from Middlesbrough. He was actually on loan to Nottingham Forest. Had a very good season in the Championship, and he signed for Tottenham Hotspur as their new right back in their team. They brought in Ivan Perisic from Inter Milan. He'd be a very promising left midfielder as well. And also they brought in Clement Lenglet from Barcelona. I think he'll be very promising for Spurs this season. And also having that signings, and also having Kane, Son Heung-min as well in that attacking area as well. I just think Spurs are going to score quite a few goals this season. They're going to probably, win a lot of matches, and I do see that happening. I do not see Spurs getting in the top 2 or top of the league. I do not see that happening. I think they'll finish 3rd. That's how high I think they'll finish. Even though that I'm an Arsenal fan myself, but I just feel that Spurs has got more stronger team than Arsenal. But I think we'll finish 4th, but I think Spurs will finish 3rd, unfortunately. And they love to come above Arsenal, but I reckon it will happen because of the signings and what they've actually have achieved in this transfer market. But so I reckon that Tottenham Hotspur, they might love all this, why I predict them above Arsenal, but I reckon Spurs finish 3rd in the Premier League for this season. In 2nd place to predict for this season, I am predicting that Liverpool will finish 2nd again. Right, they're one of the best teams, I'm telling you, in Europe. One of the best teams in Europe. We've got 2 best teams are competing one another. It's like the Barcelonas and the Real Madrids and the Bayern Munichs and the Borussia Dortmunds, and the English is like the Man Cities and the Liverpools really up there, going head to head. And I reckon it'll happen again. I reckon Liverpool and City will go head to head throughout this whole season. The biggest blow that they sold Sadio Mane to Bayern Munich, that was a huge loss for Liverpool, but they replaced him with Darwin Núñez from Benfica. He did score in the Community Shield to win them the matchup yesterday while I'm recording this video. But I feel that Liverpool, they've got Salah, got Darwin Núñez. They brought in a player from Fulham, Fabio Carvalho. They brought in not many, but some young promising players that they can build for the future for Liverpool. But I feel that Jurgen Klopp, with his team, with the players he's got, obviously Darwin Núñez as I just mentioned, I think they will have a good season, and having obviously Mo Salah there in the wing as well, playing in that position, Virgil van Dijk in defence, really not allowing teams to score against them as well. I think Alisson as well in goalkeeper, he makes some good saves throughout this whole campaign, and I reckon they're going to really go head to head with Man City once again for round 2 again for another season. But I think they'll come up short again, unfortunately, and I reckon Liverpool will come 2nd in the Premier League. We all know who I've just predicted to finish 1st, and we all know it's Manchester City. Manchester City will win the Premier League for another season. You know, they brought in Haaland, was a huge name, okay? You know, he scored so many goals for Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga, alright? He missed out on winning that competition because of Bayern Munich's quality and everything and that. But at the end of the day, Man City have really strengthened their squad. Okay, they lost Gabriel Jesus, they lost Zinchenko, yes, they lost Raheem Sterling, but they have replaced those players with likes of Haaland. You know, got Calvin Phillips as well, they got Alvarez as well, they signed as well to Manchester City as well. And I think they're going to carry on making a little bit more signings as well in their team. Obviously Calvin Phillips, who signed from Leeds, I don't think he'll be a first team player, but I think he'll be on the bench mostly, to be honest with you, this season. But at the same time, Man City's squad has got more better depth compared to Liverpool's team in terms of like everywhere around the pitch is good. Same with Liverpool's as well, don't get me wrong, but again, Man City are pretty much used to winning titles and compared to Liverpool are. So I reckon that's why I put in Man City to win the Premier League in the 2022 and 2023 season. If you like this Premier League predictions, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll do more of this content if you like and subscribe. That's all I've got to say. Peace out.